Well, hey guys, welcome to today's video. It is May the 9th, and for me, that means it's gotten to one of my really favorite times of the year, and that's when I start propagating hydrangeas. Now, I'm sitting out here in our field today, and this is a silver dollar hydrangea. In fact, there's one, two, three of them sitting right here. I've got two more over there, and I just have these planted out here in the field just for the purpose of taking cuttings from them. And we're going to start working on propagation today. It's a little bit earlier in the year than I normally start on it, maybe 2 to 3 weeks earlier than I normally start, but the wood, these stems, these new stems, they look really nice on this hydrangea, and I just want to show you why I'm doing it. And I also want to talk to you today about why this is so important to the success and to the prosperity of your nursery, that you learn how to do these essential skills like propagating hydrangeas or propagating whatever it is that you're growing. So let's jump into this today, and it's time for us to get after it. Now this is, as I mentioned, a silver dollar hydrangea. It's a Paniculata hydrangea, and as such, it's a sun-loving hydrangea, which none of that really matters for the purposes of this video, but these are a really go-to hydrangea for us. And all you do to take a cutting from a hydrangea is you just find some fresh growth from this season. So here it is, early May, and you've got at least this much growth on it. And I'm gonna go down about this far and take this cutting, and this is all new growth from this season, and I've got 1, 2, 3 sections here, and out of this one piece here, I'm going to get 1, 2, 3 cuttings out of it, and I'll show you exactly how I do that. Now you can see this cutting right here. We came inside our shade house to our table just so we have a better place to work and to make these cuttings, but I made a whole pile of these cuttings, and just to show you guys an example of what I'm doing here, I'm going to take this one cutting, and I'm going to take my clippers, and right here where the leaves break, that bud break or that node, whatever you call that, I'm just going to go up above it. Let's just say 1/4 of an inch, and it really doesn't matter, but we just say about 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/2 an inch, and then I'm going to make that cut right there. So that's one cutting, and then we'll take the rest of that and do the same thing here. Go up maybe 1/4 of an inch or so and make a second cutting. Just trim that up just so it's not quite so long, but I got about 1/4 of an inch above the node there and maybe 2 inches below. Neither of those lengths is all that important, but just to give you an idea of what I'm aiming for, that's what my cuttings are going to look like. And the only other thing that I'm going to do to this cutting is just cut off about 2/3 of each leaf. So what you're left with, it's just something that looks just about like that. And now we're going to be ready to take these and stick them in our rooting media. All right, so I'm going to be doing these in a 50 count tray. And this is just a standard 50 cell tray. There's nothing fancy about this. You can use anything you have to stick your cuttings in. Now, I mean, you can do this in a dish pan. You can do it in an old paint can with the holes drilled out of the bottom of it for drainage. You can create any number of things out of scrap wood to make yourself a little like a tray, just as long as it's got a bottom in it with drainage. You can put these in absolutely anything. Since I have a nursery, I just always have trays laying around. We always have trays, so we always just try to reuse them and make use of what we have. So all I'm going to do is fill this up with my media, and all this is a mixture of peat and perlite, and I've just mixed in a little bit of my pine bark with it just to make it go a little bit further. But you can use anything for propagation that holds a little bit of moisture and drains really well. So kind of the classic mix is just a peat and perlite mix, but you can use pure sand to root cuttings in. I mean, you can use almost anything, so don't get hung up on exactly what material to use. You need to use what's readily available to you. Use something that's cheap. This is not something where, there's a magic mixture that you need to use so this will work. Don't think, oh, if I can get the right mixture like he has, then my propagation will work great too. It's not about the mixture. I've rooted these in just my regular potting soil mixture before. I mean, it's not that critical. You just want to make sure that it's not wringing wet. So once you get your cuttings in here, once you get this filled up and you pick it up, if this thing feels like it weighs 20 pounds, then it's too heavy and it's too wet. You don't want it to be super heavy, and at the same time, you don't want it to feel like it's empty. You want to feel like you've got something there. And you know, something that's substantive, but at the same time, it's not too heavy, not too light. So this is the mixture that I use. Again, this is just a peat and perlite mix, and I've just mixed some pine bark in it, and that's really not necessary. I just have pine bark. I use it for just everything. It's a finely ground pine bark. So this is going to drain really well, and with the peat in it, it's going to hold moisture. So you want it to hold moisture and you want it to drain. So that's all we're doing here. We filled all of it up, just very gently packed it down, and you know, pack it down is not even the right term. It's really just kind of pressing it very lightly, just so each one of those 50 cells is nice and full. And now we're ready to stick our cuttings in. So once I filled this up, I just took the hose and just sprayed it down just to settle it. And now it's nice and settled. And you know, it wouldn't hurt for this to sit a little while and just really drain and settle it completely. But all we're going to do is take a pencil here and poke holes in this. You can do this with a screwdriver, a stick, your finger, whatever you want to use. And I'm just going to poke a hole in every one of these cell trays, or in every one of these cells in this tray, which is 50. Now, you can do this in 72 count trays. You can do it in 38 count trays. This is just what I have, so it's what I'm using. And 50, it has seemed to work well. These are deep 50s. You don't have to use deep 50s, and all that means is this tray is probably a ½ inch deeper than just a standard 50 count tray. Don't worry about that. You can use any 50 count tray. It doesn't make any difference. You can make a longer cutting in these if you want to, and I don't think that makes any difference. So, you know, one of the things that, you know, if you've never tried this before, one of the things that's pretty much guaranteed to happen, and I know this because I did this for my first time one time, and you know, when you're trying this for the first time, you want it to work. You know, you want it to be successful. And I get all that. But you know, you think that there are 10 things that you have to do exactly right in order for this to work, and that's just not the case. You know, you guys ask me all kinds of questions when you see me doing this. Almost, and I'm being facetious, of course, when I say this, but you're almost like, did you use your left hand or your right hand? Guys, I'm telling you, if your media drains well and it holds some moisture, this will work. And don't make it harder than it is. I showed you how to do the cuttings. It doesn't matter if it's an 1/8 inch or a ½ inch or 3/4 of an inch or 1 inch. Just make cuttings. Just cut parts of your leaf off. The only reason I cut parts of the leaf off is so it's not just a solid mass of leaves up here, just so there's room for airflow and so they're not laying all over each other. Probably works fine if you don't cut the leaves at all. And I don't want to sound like I'm fussing at you. I'm just telling you, don't overcomplicate something that's not complicated. When people start approaching plant propagation, it's really easy to do that. So, you know, don't make that hard, which is not hard. And I'm going to try to help you with that, and it's taken me a long time to learn that, but that's pretty important. All right, so I've gotten all of my cuttings made now. I've got over 50 of them here, and I just, listen, the way that I like to do this, and again, you probably don't even need to do this, but it doesn't hurt, is this is a dishpan. It's full of my cuttings, and I just put them in water just while I'm working on, just while I'm actually working with them. And I do that just so they don't try to start wilting on me. I've actually never had that happen before. Maybe I think it did happen one time when I was trying to do some cuttings when it was really, really hot. You know, maybe in, you know, just a 95 or 100 degree day or something. But I just like to stick them in water. There's no added benefit to sticking them in water. You know, there's nothing in this water. It's just water, guys. This is city water, straight out of our water hose here. And there's no magic in it. I don't use any kind of rooting hormone at all. Now, one thing that I will say, and it's really funny every time I do a video about hydrangea propagation, and this, I guess it's just an interesting thing about doing hydrangeas, I don't know, but you do not need a bottom node here. You don't need a bottom node, and you don't need rooting hormone to do hydrangeas. Now, people get their panties all in a wad about that, and they just think it's not going to work, it's not going to root. Guys, I'm telling you, I've rooted thousands of hydrangeas like this at a pretty high success rate. Look, I won't have 100% of these work, of course, but 80 to 90% of them will work. I'll have 40 or 45 good plants here, and I'm telling you, you don't need a bottom node, and you don't need rooting hormone. So if you want to use a bottom node, knock yourself out. If you want to use rooting hormone, knock yourself out. Do a side-by-side experiment with it, and without it, and let me know how it goes. I've done it. So I'm just telling you, this is really easy. Now I'm going to do these a little bit different than I have done before. I'm not about to take these and put them under mist. I'm gonna do these with a slightly different approach. I'm reworking my mist system this year. I don't have it set up yet, and that's okay. It's still really early in the season to be doing plant propagation anyway. So I'm gonna take the step of finishing this tray, and then whoops, there's one I missed. I didn't get the top of that one cut out. See, it just makes that cutting really big and bushy when you stick it in here, and it's just not necessary. It just takes too much room in the tray. So instead of putting these in the mist and doing mist propagation, I'm just going to cover these with a plastic dome. So, you know, if you're doing these in a dish pan, or if you're using you know, some kind of homemade thing to do this with, you can cover these with plastic wrap, like saran wrap, or whatever you call your plastic wrap. You can cover it with anything, just something to seal in some humidity that will still allow some light to come in. And then I'm going to take a second and I'm going to finish filling in this tray, so I have 50, and then we're going to take these and put them under a dome in a shaded area. Now, before we put the last step together here on this particular propagation method that I'm doing, just a little bit about why it matters that you can do this. So if you're a nursery trying to, you know, make it as a nursery of any size, you have got to be able to grow your own plants. Now, depending on what you're trying to do, you may want to propagate and grow and sell 100% of plants only that you've grown yourself, and that's a great way to do a nursery. There's no doubt about it. I would love to do more of my own propagation, and we're working on that as time goes on. But your margins are going to be so much better on plants that you propagate yourself. A plant like a hydrangea has a nice, reasonably quick turnaround time. I mean, depending on exactly how this goes, I may be able to sell these next summer, but certainly by the next summer, these will be big, nice hydrangeas, 3-gallon hydrangeas. I mean, it just doesn't take that long for them to grow. So that's one of the reasons I love hydrangeas. They're easy to propagate. Everybody knows what they are. They're great sellers. They're beautiful plants, but they really help a nursery's profit margin, not because they're a hydrangea, but because they're plants that we propagate ourselves. So if you're doing plants from seed, if you're doing plants from division, you need to learn how to propagate by doing cuttings, because it's an invaluable part of any nursery. Now, as we get later on in the season, I'll do more about mist propagation later in the season and set up a new propagation system. But today, I'm going to take this tray and I'm going to set this plastic dome. I'm going to call it a humidity dome right on top of those. And that's a little tight, but it's fine. And before I put this up, and when I say put it up, I'm going to leave it sitting outside on my deck. Now, where I live, we're way past our frost. We're not, you know, we're not even going to get below 50 at night. So for the foreseeable future, I mean, until next fall. So our temperatures are great for this. You can do this inside your house. Just sit it in your kitchen or sit it anywhere you got some spare space. You can do this inside your house. But I'm going to give these a little spray of mist, just a few little very light sprays before I put them to bed for good, if you want to say that. But I'm going to just put this back on my back deck, and I'm just going to leave it alone and just let it sit. And maybe every other day or something like that, I'll take the lid off of it like so and just let it air out just a little. Maybe let the leaves dry just a little if they're still damp. Then I'll just spray them again. Just lightly spray them. We're not soaking them. We're not doing anything like that. And then I'll just put the cover right back on them. And what that cover does in propagation is just an environmental control. You know, it allows these really tender cuttings to not deal with the dry air of midday versus the moist air of night, because that can shrivel them up and just cause them to fail. It's one thing that can cause them to fail. So all of that to say, guys, this is going to be it, and I'll show you how this works out. And I think this is a successful way to do a lot of cuttings. I'm looking forward to sharing the results with you. So one thing I really wanted you to see is how easy this is, and it absolutely is an easy way to do cuttings. So there you go. Well, all right, guys, that wraps it up for today's video. I'll give you an update on these in, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks, and we'll see if they're starting to root by then. But I'm anxious to see how it goes and anxious to share it with you. So as always, I appreciate y'all watching. I love y'all, and I'll see you on the next one.